Recently, a question was posted to me, not on here on YouTube, but and it wasn't really posted directly to me. It was just the context of a discussion about respect, and I think respect is one of those words that's so overused and so vague and ambiguous in some way that it hardly carries any real meaning in today's world. There's a lot of words that I feel have kind of lost any shred of meaning due to the way they're so carelessly tossed around. It's kind of like in AA, I've noticed how many people will throw around these psychological terms like, narcissist or passive aggressive or something like that. It's funny, they're all guilty in AA of those very behaviors that they like to accuse everybody of. They're always saying someone's narcissistic, or they're always saying this is passive aggressive. None of these people are shrinks. None of these people are even psychologists or social workers or have any degrees in the study of human behavior at all. But it's almost like in today's world with the information age, anybody with a Google handy can Google a couple of articles, and all of a sudden they think there's some kind of psychiatric expert, or something like that. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of doing it. I've been guilty of the very same thing from time, especially in something that I'm not too knowledgeable about. I just, do a couple of quick searches and kind of get a generalized idea. But I've learned not to do that in terms of actual, if you're going to have any kind of in-depth discussion, say philosophically or politically, I'm not really inclined to talk about politics or, whatever. I've learned that it's generally not a good idea to not have all the facts at your disposal before you start out in something like that, because someone who is more well-versed and more well-educated and with a good grasp of the facts at hand will lay waste to you, and you'll be humiliated. It's one of those things, kind of like when it comes to say, talking about current events. I have a generalized idea on current events based upon the fact that I read from multiple news sources and I, listen to a few things here and there, but it hardly makes me an expert, in my opinion, from my own standpoint, where I would feel valid trying to make an observation about it with any kind of authority. I think that it's kind of like something with any subject that I feel that I have a good grasp about, and not just about this, but any subject in general that I would like to discuss with people in general, even if it's like-minded people, like, say, the topic of film or the topic of history. There are certain topics, for example, that I feel fairly confident in discussing. It didn't happen overnight. Like, I don't know, let me pick something. Like medieval history. I went through a phase where I was genuinely interested in that, and I read about it quite a lot. And I'm going to say it probably took me probably a good year before I felt confident enough that I could actually engage in a conversation with, say, somebody on a historical webpage or something like that, where I felt like I pretty much had a good grasp of the material that I was talking about. And it's kind of like with this channel, which is dedicated to ridiculing and mocking Quackaholics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. Being in AA for 12 years and having participated in the business meetings and having participated in those so-called meetings after the meetings and having had sponsors and doing step work and all the other stuff. I mean, I have a pretty good grasp of all that goes on in behind the scenes and all the things that goes on, and having been someone that was forced to read the literature over and over again, I have a pretty good understanding of the bullshit teachings of it, and I feel pretty confident when I come on here to talk about AA or recovery or anything else, because I know what I'm talking about. So if anyone had actually, if anyone challenged me to a debate or anyone tried to argue with me about anything connected to Alcoholics Anonymous, I mean, I'd feel fairly confident in going up against them. I wouldn't be too worried about it. If some pro-AA member challenged me to some kind of debate, for example, I wouldn't be worried at all about not being on solid ground before actually, making an argument or making a claim. And it seems like I've wandered a little bit off of what I wanted to to touch on with this video, but I was actually laying the groundwork for what I said. There's terminology and things that are thrown around in today's world that seem to carry very little weight. And the discussion that I was referring to is where someone said, something about respect and AA. I don't feel AA deserves any respect at all. Depending on, respect is kind of one of those things that everybody has kind of an expert opinion on. Respect is earned. Respect is a two-way streak. Respect is this or respect is that. There's no really one singularity or agreed upon definition that everybody can say, with a definite line in the sand, that's respect. Pretty much disrespect is actually given a better, broader definition than respect itself. Disrespect, I think, is almost just like a common sense thing. Disrespect pretty much kind of defines itself in people's behavior and in their attitudes and their actions and what they say to other people. But it's an interesting thing that I noticed how many people who are critical of recovery and they're critical of AA in general, they oftentimes, like if you look at certain articles on the Fix, or if you look at some videos that are even on YouTube, or some, even some books I've read that are kind of critical to AA, they all kind of want to kind of dance around the issue, and they want to say something like, AA has helped a lot of people, AA is a good thing, but, then they want to throw in some little things here and there to try to, what they're really saying is they don't believe that AA is no great organization. They're just afraid that the cult is going to give them some kind of really hard blowback if they come right out and say the truth about it. Now, I'm making a guess there. I'm not saying that I know the intentions of the people who write these articles or make these videos or say these things. I don't possibly know that. I've just noticed that everybody in the recovery community, when it comes to, I guess, the academic side of it, or really pretty much in today's world, anybody who wants to openly and express an opinion, they generally try to treat AA like it's kind of like this powerful entity that you really don't want to say too many bad things about. And you know what, when you have someone like me who comes along and says AA is a bunch of bullshit, generally the responses I've gotten, not always, I mean, there's a lot of people that totally like what I do up here because of the fact they've gone through the same kinds of things I've gone through, but there's a lot of people that say, well, maybe you shouldn't really use such blunt terms, or maybe you should be a little bit more respectful, or maybe you should not quite be so crude. Maybe you could reach a wider audience of people if you try to and I'm really not sure exactly what they're expecting of me on that, and that's why I say respect in this context is meaningless. I don't respect an organization that has maneuvered its way into the legal system where people are forcibly court-ordered into it, that tells people that it's the only solution out there that's proven to work, which in other words is a lie, so it's built upon lies. An organization that tries to shove religious doctrine on people, that brainwashes people, that breaks their self-confidence, that breaks their self-esteem, that writes off the unfortunate people that don't get help through its program and end up dead or even worse. I don't see anywhere written that I should show that organization any respect, or that I should treat it with any kind of kitty gloves, or that I should actually choose my words real carefully in how I want to describe them. I don't really see that they've earned that. I don't really see that there's enough people who criticize it for what it is. Out in the world, or out in the recovery community, journalistically speaking, or even people on YouTube, or opinion pieces or blogs, or however you want to include it, I don't see enough disrespect being shown to AA. I think that it doesn't deserve to be treated as anything that's effective. I don't think it deserves to be treated as anything that is remotely constructive or good. And in order for me to try to show some respect to AA, as some people have asked me to do in the past. This is way back. This isn't recent. This is way, way back when I first got started. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. This channel turns 1 year old this month. In fact, it already did. But early on, there were people that said, you know, do you have to use terms like quackaholics? You know, do you have to say things like, you know, assholes and, you know, all that other kind of stuff, you know. In other words, they're suggesting to me that I owe some kind of diplomacy to viewers in general, or something like that. And, you know, to me, the type of target audience I'm trying to reach, the primary goal that I started out with from the get-go was was people who were kind of trapped in the cult like myself, that were either trying to get out, or people that were not getting any good results from the cult religion itself, that didn't know there were any other methods. People whose lives had been wrecked by the AA religion is the target audiences that I wanted to reach. And in that respect, I didn't feel, and I still do not feel, that I should have handled anything with kitty gloves or with any kind of diplomacy. I don't feel it deserves it. I don't feel an organization that protects the type of people it protects, and that shelters the type of people it shelters, is worthy of anything but ridicule and scorn. As far as you know, diplomacy is concerned, I mean, there's tons and tons of articles and writers and blogs, etc., as I've already mentioned, that want to treat the AA religion with kitty gloves, and I'm not one of them. I'm not here. I never had the intention of being that way. I don't have the intention of being that way. I don't see any reason to change for that. I don't have any intention of being nice about AA membership or its doctrines or anything else about it. As long as you've got people out there who actually believe that the unfortunate ones who don't get the adequate help they need and die are dead because of, and you are not, because of God's grace, or as long as you're peddling lies to desperate people who really are in need of psychological, mental help or whatever to overcome their addiction, and you treat them the way that I've seen people treat the newcomers and the way that they treated me, and I see or saw the level of bullying that I saw, and the level of gaslighting I saw, and the level of narcissistic techniques that I saw employed by that organization, then you don't deserve to be talked to respectfully. You deserve to be insulted. You deserve to get an emotional reaction out from the way that someone talks to you. I mean, really and truly, I've noticed how bold they become when people try to even show any hint of being, you know, I guess you could say gentlemanly would be about the best word that would come to mind off the top of my head. I've noticed they react more aggressively. It's kind of like bullies. The more nicer you are to them, the more aggressive they become. And it's a familiar technique to me. It's almost like a trait that I've noticed where you criticize an individual's personality, you criticize an individual's choice of words, you criticize every kind of thing you can about an individual to undermine him, but you don't actually touch upon the subject he's talking about. You don't actually address an actual valid argument. It's kind of an underhanded way, and I talked about this last week, and I guess I'm expounding on it a little bit more. If you really feel that AA should be handled with kitty gloves and respect, then, you know, it's really quite simple. You don't have to watch this particular channel. You don't have to watch these particular videos. Nobody's court-ordered into watching my videos. And that's, you know, that's the one thing that always has annoyed me about people that want to say people who are against AA are just as bad as the AA people. There's this one fucking troll on here that was talking about, you know, listening to you is like listening to an AA speaker meeting. Well, I mean, nobody's court-ordered to listen to me. Nobody is told that by listening to you, that if you don't listen to me, you'll drink yourself to death and die. Nobody's told that I've got some kind of, I've never proclaimed myself to be the way and the truth and the light, okay, for everybody out there who's got an addiction problem and only I can solve it. And if you don't kiss my ass and bow and scrape to me humbly for the rest of your life in gratitude that you're going to die. So the comparison to me and AA people, I mean, is total apples and oranges, but it's also really kind of pathetic. I mean, I almost feel like you wasted an opportunity. You wasted an opportunity where you could have actually, I don't know, you could have addressed something I said that was incorrect. You could have addressed something I said in the literature that I misrepresented, if that's what you believed. You could address any number of things about me, but you choose on a number of these things to go after character, or go after language, or go after delivery or performance or whatever. And to me, that's just a convenient way of saying, I don't want to address the argument, I want to address you as a person. And if I can undermine you as a person, then that means that you are in, that you're answerable to me, or in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. It's a classic trick that psychological bullies and manipulative people use. As a matter of fact, I was reading an article about narcissists and their tactics. And I'm not one of these psychological experts that goes around calling everybody a narcissist, you know, at the drop of a hat. If somebody does something that looks like it's a little vain or a little egotistical, I don't automatically do the pop psychology bit and say, oh, he's a narcissist. I'm talking about the observation of what I saw that narcissists do to people, and the observation of what I see AA people do to newcomers, and AA people do to true believers, and AA does to people who are chronically relapsing and struggling with their addictions. It was almost like you could have taken the word narcissist out of the article and you could have put Alcoholics Anonymous members into the article, and that's how eerily accurate it was, how closely it paralleled. And you know, these types of tactics, once you kind of familiarize yourself with it, then you're not as susceptible to it. I've seen a lot of people get hurt when they dare speak out against the cult, not really so much in the context of what I'm doing right here, but I mean people that were still in AA and still kind of on uncertain terms and a little bit uncertain about themselves. You know, I've seen them, you know, how can I describe this exactly, where it's kind of like a gang. It's kind of like the AA members are jackals, and if they get a scent of blood, you know, they all jump on you all at once. They'll jump on the vulnerable. If they see weakness, or if they see vulnerability, or if they see sensitivity, it's like they have some kind of radar. They can zero in on that for some kind of attack and utterly decimate people. You know, a lot of people, when they get into these 12-step programs, and I know because at the time that I can very clearly remember what it's like to be in that fragile, vulnerable, uncertain state where you're terrified that you're going to go back to being drunk, where you suspect these people don't have your best interests at heart, but you really have no idea where to go. You really have no idea what to do. And a situation like that can literally, you know, fuck you up mentally just as bad as it is if you're, say, walking down the street and somebody just walks up to you and punches you in the face. I mean, because when that happens, it shatters your whole reality for a little bit. It puts you kind of in an uncertain, shaky ground where everything suddenly becomes almost like a fear response on everything. Like I remember one time a long time ago, I walked into the middle of a robbery going on at a gas station. I mean, it wasn't no Hollywood movie scenario type thing, but it was a robbery in progress. And you know, I didn't know if I was going to get shot or not. And I remember after it was all over with, like for weeks afterward, every time I walked into a gas station, all of a sudden I'd get nervous and apprehensive, or like I didn't want to go out late at night because I was afraid of this, or, you know, little psychological things like that kind of followed me around for a long time. And when it's the same sort of thing when you're bullied around in AA by people. When you're in a vulnerable, fragile state, it kind of fucks you up in terms of shaking up your self-confidence, in terms of shaking up your definitions of who you are. The term gaslighting it comes to mind, and that, as a matter of fact, I'll post a link to that article in the bottom of this video when I get done with it. But when you see these people kind of in that vein, when you read about them, you see that, I mean, a narcissist, for example, the type of person that would manipulate and destroy your life. And of course you can't, it's a case-by-case basis on how to break away from them altogether. But the more you try to play their game, the more you try to reason with them, the more you try to use diplomacy with them, the more you try to speak to them respectfully, or the more you try to outwit them or outsmart them, all you're inevitably doing is tangling yourself deeper and deeper into their web of deceit. And they're pretty much aware of this, and they're pretty much aware of what they're doing, and they know how to keep doing that until they can destroy your sanity, destroy yourself, etc., which is something that AA does all the time. And I see a lot of the times when I'm arguing with members online, I guess it's an observation I've been making, how often they try to use these very same tactics. They're still talking to people like they're still in the cult. They're still talking to people the way that they talk to people, on a regular basis in their meetings. And for fragile, emotionally unbalanced, or mentally not unbalanced in a derogatory manner, but people who are just fresh away from AA and they're not quite assured of themselves, I guess you could say, or some level of self-confidence in themselves, it can hurt them really badly. It can fuck them up. And so therefore, I don't see any reason why these kinds of people deserve any respect whatsoever. I think they deserve exactly what they send out. I think they deserve exactly what they get. I don't have no problem sitting up here saying something like, fuck you cult religious members. I don't have no desire to apologize for that, and I'm just not going to. In terms of actually being on some kind of solid foundational for yourself, I can actually relate. It took me a long time when I first left AA to actually gain any kind of sense of self back again. I know that's, for me, that's almost like a crime to admit, because, before AA in my life, I was always, taught to be independent. I was taught to never bow down to anything. I was taught to always be true to yourself, and I was taught to never sell yourself out or anything like that. And then, sadly enough, when I was caught up in the grips of the cult, I mean, I kind of became an antithesis of everything I was taught to be in life. And not really taught to be in life. A lot of my conclusions in life were formulated through experiences of my own. In other words, I'm nothing like the value system that I was brought up in my household. I'm nothing like the teachings I had on what's moral and immoral in terms of Christianity and all those kinds of things. A lot of the judgments I have today, I guess you could say, are a lot of the experiences that formulated my ideas of what I would call, being true, or being a stand-up guy, or being someone that stands firmly on your own 2 feet. They came about through repeated experiences, repeated negative experiences, really, both before AA, during AA, and after AA. I mean, it's like people that have brought up this idea of truly being liberated from the cult itself. I mean, you could say that a strong sense of outrage and a strong sense of my own ethical standpoint today comes from having endured all of that and survived all of that. It's not so much a question of still being trapped in the AA cult religion as it is saying that, yeah, the AA cult religion severely hurt me in a lot of ways. And even though I've actually managed to pick up the pieces in my life and start back over, and I've actually kind of reclaimed my old self, if you will, reclaimed and found the person that I wanted to be, not quite the old self, because, you're an ever-changing individual, based upon your experiences and what happens to you and the things that you read or see or hear that constantly make you evolve, that force you to evolve. But I'm kind of a step closer, I guess, to not being this guy that had no confidence in himself and had no confidence in his own abilities to think for himself or anything else that the cult took away from me. And it's a little bit of a long, drawn-out process, and I think about the number of these assholes that have sat in these fucking meetings for 10 and 20 years and the practices that they've engaged in, where they treated people like this, where they made a career out of destroying other people's lives, where they made a career out of destroying people's confidence, where they made a career out of breaking people down and tormenting people and ruining their lives. And I have to say that, no, they don't deserve my respect at all. I'm not going to give them respect. I'm not going to be nice on this channel. I'm not going to be, I think, AA has helped some people. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to even say AA has played a role in anybody's sobriety. There was a topic that came up not too long ago where somebody was saying, does AA really truly work for anyone? And the answer would actually have to be no. AA doesn't work for nobody. The people who quit drinking in AA were going to quit drinking anyway. Okay, there's no mystical force. I've done all 12 of those steps, and I'm here to tell you, there's no mystical force that comes out the fucking sky, okay, and takes the drink out of your hand and floats it away from you along with the obsession to do it. That's not there. I mean, you quit drinking because you want to quit drinking. I mean, I went through a phase in the cult myself where I was saying, it's all due to AA that I had quit drinking. It wasn't due to AA. It was because I wanted to quit drinking. I mean, nobody poured the liquor down my throat except myself, so it would stand to reason that nobody could stop pouring the liquor down my throat but me. It's one of the aspects I hate the most about AA, the way it crushes your individuality and it crushes your belief in yourself to accomplish anything. I was really on uncertain ground for a long time when I got out of the cult. I didn't really, even on things that I knew I was qualified for in job interviews, for example, I was literally eat up with this feeling of inferiority. To the point that I was literally fucking up, interviews and stuff. I was literally eat up with this inferiority to where it affected my everyday interactions with people in general. I'd almost become paranoid. I felt like everybody was judging me. I felt like everybody was looking down at me. I felt like everybody was looking at me. It's so incredibly liberating to not have that today. And truly not have it. I mean, to just truly not feel that you're in a place where you have to justify every move you make or justify every statement that you make, where you can just simply actually just live as an independent human being. That doesn't really, you don't really have to prove yourself or justify yourself to anyone. And I think that, that to me is one of the greatest gifts of getting away from the cult religion that there is, the ability to be you again. And, fuck those people in AA who are crooked and who enjoy their manipulative, bullying mind fucking tactics. They're owed no respect at all. They're owed zero respect from me, and I'm not going to give them any respect. So for those of you out here who are subscribed to the channel, there's 80 of you now, by the way. I've got 80 subscriptions, so maybe I'll make it 100 in the new year. Maybe I won't. I don't know. Who cares about that, right? For those of you who watch this channel because you enjoy my attitude towards AA, because you enjoy the fact that I insult the cult religion and don't mind smashing it down, don't worry, because I'm not going to back off that one bit. I'm just as disrespectful to them as ever. Hopefully I'll get to see you guys before Christmas. I don't know. I don't really celebrate holidays. It's not because of any reason. I've grown to not like holidays from unpleasant memories and personal reasons. It has nothing to do with anything outside of that. I mean, it's just a depressing holiday to me. My idea of a perfect Christmas is being able to sit at home alone and, watch my favorite movies and not have to go to work and not have to talk on the phone to anybody and not have to deal with any managers. That's my idea of a perfect holiday, but there was a time when I could openly joke in public about, hating holidays. I mean, I used to just go out of my way to tell everybody how much I hated fucking Thanksgiving, how much I hated Christmas and all of that. I really just don't feel a need to do that much today. I mean, it's like, just don't bother me. If someone says Merry Christmas to me, normally 90% of the time I just say, and you too. I mean, I don't really say Merry Christmas, and I'm not going to. I just say you too. So, hopefully I'll see you guys before this holiday season is over. And maybe I'll see you guys one more time before we venture into 2018, eh? Alright, that's it for now.